What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host, who does the most, Ethan Smith. Hope you all are having a phenomenal Monday, February 21st. Happy President's Day. I don't know if you're off of work today, having a 3-day weekend with, the company holiday. I will be working later, so I do not have President's Day off, but hopefully you all are having a phenomenal start to your morning, a phenomenal start to your week here as we wrap up the month of February, which would usually mean spring training would be on the way, but even though it might not be on time, we are still going to be outlooking and previewing the 2022 season for the Pittsburgh Pirates and some other teams. So how do the Pirates stack up, and who are the favorites around Major League Baseball to win awards and potentially compete for the World Series? Are we going to finally see any players get extended at any point this year or at the end of this year? Who are some trade candidates and some breakout candidates on this Pittsburgh Pirates team? Those are some big questions as well. Of course, thank you for making me your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Sports Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode, of course, is brought to you by BetOnline. Make sure you head over to betonline.net right now, and that's where the game starts, where you can bet on college basketball, pro basketball, hockey, UFC, anything you want to bet on. You can do all of that over there at BetOnline. And with all that said, Gary Morgan is joining us today, as he always does on Mondays, and I will see you on the flip side after the music hits.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, guys, when the music hits, Gary joins the screen. Maybe I'll start bringing him in before, just to change things up a little bit. But Gary, how are you doing today on this phenomenal Monday, where realistically the month of February is already pretty much done at this point?
Yeah, February's a quick hitter, man. It just it comes and goes pretty fast, and you would think a couple days would make a difference, but it sure does.
Yeah, I know. And the crazy part about it is usually the month of February is a fun month for guys like me and you, because pitchers and catchers report and spring training starts. And right now, of course, that isn't happening. The CBA, it seems like, with the players and the owners, is kind of having their last-ditch effort to say, okay, let's see if we can get somewhere. But you mentioned this before we started on the air today, and multiple times with me between the episode I had with you on the fan forum and today, that it seems like they're just basically trying to do anything possible to kind of save face a little bit, to make it look like they're at least trying to get this thing going. But are they just too far apart to see us start the season on time?
It's so hard to say.
Yeah.
I look at the numbers that are being tossed around by the journalists right now, and I don't see a path forward. When you're upwards of $100 million apart on something brand new in the first place, it's never been part of the CBA before, and you've got a drastic vision difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's a chasm like that. It's either going to get dropped entirely, or they're going to give in and let the owners have a slow walk into it. Because I don't see the owners coming up from where they are.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, I think we're on the same page with this. I think the owners are pretty stuck in their ways. They're going to be stuck where they are, and I think that's how it's going to stay. But on a lighter note, the 2022 season for the Pirates, ever since some of the stuff that's happened this offseason, ever since the season ended last year, I've been thinking about, okay, what are we going to see this year? Of course, the team went 61 and 101 last year, probably not getting 162 games. So, but think as if we do. Do you think this Pirates team, as it is currently constructed, would see an uptick or a downtick in their win total this year if there was 162 games?
Oh, I think they'd win more games. I really do. It's really hard to lose that much. Yeah. It really is. And people want to pretend it's not because, they've seen it more often in this market than other places. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it doesn't happen more frequently in Pittsburgh. But it's still not something that's easy to do. you don't just got to stink. You got to stink and be unlucky on top of it.
Yeah.
To lose that many games. They've done that successfully a couple times now. I just don't see it this year. I think the pitching is better, and I think the pitching has a lot more potential, and they have a lot more options. Even if they feel somebody's a failure, so I kind of like them to improve, even if it's just marginally.
Yeah, I mean, even a marginal improvement, I think, would go a long way, especially for like me and everybody who listens to this podcast. Because at this point of the rebuild, you really just want to see improvement. And of course, last year it was all individual improvement. I think you guys probably heard me and Gary say that about 50 million times last year. That it was just whoever it improves player wise, that's what we care about. Moving into this year, though, you still want to see that. But you also kind of want to see a nucleus start to form here. Like, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, or whatever they used to say.
Yeah.
You got to start seeing, like, some, like, kind of nucleus build. Like, you already know Brian Reynolds is a good player. You already know Ke'Bryan Hayes, when healthy, is a good player. O'Neal Cruz could probably be the same kind of guy as well, but I don't think he's going to be here the whole year. But you got to start seeing some more guys join this party and make it a, I used to say Marte Parte all the time. I loved when, God, I can't even think of our commentator's name now. But I loved when he said that. But at the end of the day, I mean, I would be fine with a 65 to 70 win season if we see some very drastic improvements from, well, I wouldn't even say drastic improvements, some just minor, even major improvements from any of these guys that have a lot of hype heading into the year.
I mean, bro, they could win 70 games this year. And if they just avoid being blown out as frequently as they were, you might feel better about it.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there just needs to be a certain overall feeling that they have a chance in every game. That's not what we've had. You can do that and still lose a considerable amount of games. You can feel that without actually seeing it in the record. I think we're going to see an improvement, though, this year. I really do.
Oh, yeah, of course. And looking away from the Pirates just for a moment, though, not some interesting things happened this offseason before the lockout, but there's still a lot of puzzle pieces to play here. Who would stack up as the favorites right now, though, before those other puzzle pieces fall into place?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about some pretty giant puzzle pieces. You know, like arguably one of the best players in the league hasn't landed yet. You know, it's really tough to sit here and tell you that these guys are going to be great. These guys aren't. We'll stick to our division. I think that's probably the best way to go for me. The Cardinals, I think, are still going to be the cream of the crop in the division. They've kept most of everything they wanted to keep. And I do think they'll add a pitcher.
Yeah.
So I think the Cardinals are probably the favorites still. The Brewers, I think, are actively trying to hold on to things. But I think you're going to start to see the wheels come off a little bit this year. They almost have to move Josh Hader.
Yeah.
They'd be foolish not to. He's not going to extend with them. And, you know, they can get a whole heck of a lot for him if they move him.
Yeah, and
That's their MO.
Yeah, and I actually thought about that with the Brewers the other day as well, as we look at the NL Central a little bit more, is Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff, that's going to be very tough to re-sign in a market like that, because those guys are going to want a lot of money. And you just mentioned it with Hader already. Whenever those guys come up, that's going to be a very interesting dilemma for them to say, do we literally pour all of our available money into these two pitchers and then hope that everything falls into place, or do we trade them for a... Honestly, if you're talking about trading Brandon Woodruff for Corbin Burns, you're talking about top 100 prospect times 3 or 2 probably, at least.
Should be.
Especially for Burns.
Yeah, I think Burns is the best shot of getting re-signed there. The Brewers will spend some money too. They should be the envy of every Pirates fan, to be honest.
Yeah.
With the way they operate, but and they have Christian Yelich, so their window is about as long as he is. Um, I think Burns is somebody they'd probably try to hold on to because of the age. Woodruff, not so much. The Reds, I think we're starting to see them fall apart, even though they've added some intriguing young players like India and whatnot. I do think they have a nice little crop coming up.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to lose a lot of their veterans. And
Yes.
it's just, it is what it is. I mean, the Reds go through these cycles. Pirates are right there with them. I think there's going to be more of a battle for the bottom than the top this year.
Is there a world the Pirates don't finish fifth in the NL Central?
Not that I can see on paper
No.
right now. Maybe the Cubs, depending on how they want to approach this. Like we were even talking about on our show the other day. It really depends on how the Cubs handle this rebuild right now. Like if significant changes come to the league and they feel like there's a reason for them to go for, the 500-ish mark to make the playoffs, I could see them adding some significant pieces and making sure 500's in the window.
Oh, yeah, of course. And if you guys missed that, by the way, go check out the Pirates fan forum on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I was a guest on there last week, so that was a really fun time. So a lot of stuff that we talked about, kind of revisiting it today, but just in a different kind of forum. But before we move on today, of course, today's episode, of course, is brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the planet. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're 100% covered in real chocolate, just like all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. They are low-calorie, high-protein. They taste like candy bars, but you might as well replace them with your candy bars because they're better. Go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, and low carbs. They have 9 different flavors that you can also choose from, and you can snag a mix box if you'd like to try all of these flavors. And of course, make sure you use the promo code LOCKEDON in all caps at Built.com for the best protein bars on the planet. And today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need, like these baseball teams that we just talked about are trying to stock parts ahead of the season. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning, like an MLB lockout, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Rock Auto is a family business, serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer, and make sure when you go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck that you write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that I sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That is rockauto.com. And now Gary knows I have this infatuation with extension talk. I have this infatuation with it. And we just watched a megastar turn down a 13-year, $350 million extension. So who's to say that anybody on the Pirates would sign anything right now? But is there any more free agent acquisitions or extensions that you could see happening once the lockout ends that the Pirates could possibly make?
Well, free agent, you have to say yes because Ben Cherington's told us he wants one. So, until he doesn't, yeah, he wants a free agent pitcher. So, yes, of course there is. I don't expect it to be a mega thing, though.
No.
Brian Reynolds is still out there. If they don't sign Brian Reynolds this year, I think the likelihood is much, much slimmer that it ever happens. So I would say this offseason is still when that should take place. Brian Hayes, man, I'd chill on that, to be honest with you. And it's not because I don't think he's good. First of all, I kind of thought it was unlikely to begin with. His dad's a major leaguer, so he kind of knows what his kid would be giving away by signing away part of his arbitration years anyway. chances are he's been advised against that. And then, O'Neal Cruz. The Pirates just are not the type that's going to sign somebody before they've really done anything for 10 years. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
No.
And O'Neal Cruz isn't dumb enough to sign a Jose Tabata deal. So you're not going to get him on the cheap for 10 years.
Man, a Jose Tabata deal for O'Neal Cruz would be the greatest thing that ever happened to this team in the past decade. I'm going to be honest. That'd be hilarious if it happened. I'd feel bad for the guy, but
Yeah.
oh my God. The amount of money, flexibility you would have would be great. Now, of course, you already know free agent acquisition-wise, Cherington has said he wants a pitcher. There's some names out there. Don't expect them to bring in some, ridiculous player here. But please, for the love of everything that is holy, I wish that Ben Cherington, I hope the first thing he does when this, lockout is over, I hope the first thing he does is calls up every single available free agent catcher and asks them, do you want to sign a 1-year, $2 million deal so I don't have to see Michael Perez be my backup catcher again?
Yeah, I think that's an area I would address as well. But I look at that entire board of free agent catchers and I don't want them.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Michael Perez as a backup either, but I think we might have to live with it. And I also think they really like the progression for some reason that Carter Benz has made. I've heard it and read it multiple times now, and I didn't see it at all. So I'm kind of taken aback by what they believe they've seen. But somebody keeps talking about his swing change, and they really like what he's done. So maybe he's somebody that they think is going to move faster than I personally do.
And there's reason to be skeptical, obviously. I mean, what have we seen from Carter Benz that says, oh, yeah, this guy is definitely the man here? You haven't really seen anything. And this made me think, too, about this before I said that every single Pittsburgh team has a problem with backups at a certain position. I'll let you think. I'll let you think about what problem the Penguins have to deal with and what problem the Steelers have to deal with in terms of a backup position. And I'm sure everybody in here that probably watches hockey already knows what I'm talking about. So, but at the end of the day, extensions unlikely per usual. I cry a tear every single day when Brian Reynolds is not already extended for 5 years, $60 million. But, the Pirates love to make trades. So I think some of these are probably obvious. But who are some guys that will probably see the door and probably be traded at some point this year as well? I can think of a couple already, but I want to hear your thoughts as well.
Chris Stratton is hard to not envision him being traded at some point. Just kind of makes too much sense. I could see one of the Pirates' younger pitchers being moved. I think, for instance, let's say that JT Brubaker proves that he's a decent pitcher, but not necessarily going to be able to hold water when it comes to the next wave of prospects coming up. Mm-hmm. Don't be shocked if they pull the trigger on something like that to see if they can get something. They do have, you can say that they're all unproven, and they are. But because they're all unproven, they're all on equal footing. So
yeah,
you've
exactly.
got 10, 15 guys right there. Don't be surprised if they pick one of them off and move them, right? So there's that. And then I think Kevin Newman or Cole Tucker. For the same reason, really. There's a glut of players that can play those positions, and I think you could easily see that. Before the season's over, how could you not say Yoshi?
Yeah, at the end of the day as well. I mean, you still have... The one thing that I'm tired of hearing, by the way, on social media is Yoshi Tsutsugo is the only person on the team that can play first base. Do people forget that Michael Chavis can also play the position? I'm not saying he's going to play it proficiently, but he can play it, especially with the universal DH coming up. I would love to slide Yoshi into the DH role and have Chavis field. I'd rather have Chavis field than Yoshi. At the end of the day. You trade Yoshi Tsutsugo, slide somebody else into the DH spot, Chavis just bats as the third baseman. Or first baseman.
Right.
I mean, it's not like this ever world, like, a lot of people are acting like this is a massive black hole that's at first base now because they traded Colin Moran. And I'm like, no, it's really not. And there's the possibility that maybe you see Mason Martin come up this year. I'm saying maybe. That's a strong maybe, but it's a possibility that it happens. Another guy that I wanted to mention, though, that I think could possibly be in this spot because, again, of the amount of glut of players that you have, Ben Gamble. I like what he's done, but, I mean, you have so many guys there, like you've mentioned already, with Greg Allen, Anthony Alford, Brian Reynolds, Travis Swaggerty, Jack Sawinski, Kanan Smith and Jigba. There's a lot of guys there, too. So eventually they get impressed with, say, like Swaggerty or Njigba, and they come up and do well right before the deadline. I mean, Gamble, I think, would garner something. It's not going to be like anything terrible.
He's not a bad thought either. I mean, you're right. His contract will be expiring this year. He doesn't have any more arbitration. He's right in the wheelhouse of the type of guy that you'd move. To me, it would be a lot more in play if they allowed you to trade for, like, international dollars again.
Yeah.
That's something that they've taken off the table last year. Because I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to get you anybody highly ranked enough to be a lottery ticket. And they certainly don't need to be clogging the works up anymore with mid-level project prospects that, you know, are running out of time and have to be protected or, you know. So I'd rather see them just hold on to him if that's the case. But
oh, yeah. And that's what I would rather see, too, honestly. But at the end of the day, I mean, you never know. Baseball is that kind of weird sport where you never really know. I mean, Gamble could come out and hit 300, and all of a sudden then his value, we're talking about us getting a lottery ticket for him. You never know.
Truth.
I mean, and trade candidates are always fun to talk about, too, and they always emerge in the weirdest of ways. Did anybody really think Adam Frazier was going to be that valuable last year before the season started? Nope. Definitely not me, because I always thought he was a little weird. But if you want to bet on stuff like this, make sure you go to betonline.net. Football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land. Shout out to the Steelers, by the way, for making the best hire of the offseason and getting Brian Flores. BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions over at BetOnline, where the game starts. And thank you for making Locked On Pirates your first listen every day. Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, you all actually blew up that episode that I had Lindsey on here because he said that O'Neal Cruz is a dinosaur. So, I mean, anybody that speaks in good light of O'Neal Cruz, I think, is usually a friend of the podcast at this point. But speaking of breakout candidates, there's a lot. Me and Gary could have literally had this entire podcast today about just this. Like, I'm going to be honest. There's about 15 or 20 guys that really have a shot to say, I can be a breakout candidate this year. Now, is that going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. But who are some guys that come to mind initially, Gary, that either you want to see break out or think are going to, and it's an inevitability that we're going to make these guys a household name?
Well, want to see. I'll take that 15 you mentioned.
Yeah, the 15 would be great.
I'd like that. No, I've said before, I think Mitch Keller is probably the one that I think has the best shot to really stand out. I think he's worked very hard this offseason. And I kind of liked what he was doing towards the end of the season as well, in actual games. I think he's probably got the chance, and he's right in the wheelhouse of when he should. He probably would have the most impact, too, if you think about it.
Yeah.
As far as breakouts, though, man, you're gonna have a ton of options like that when you have a young team. You know, we've got a very young team. There just are a lot of guys that have not proven themselves yet. And some of them are going to feel like they came out of nowhere, but that's expected. Like if Rodolfo Castro got called up this year and went off, would he be a a breakout, would you be shocked? That he came up and did really well?
I mean, is he playing against the Mets every game?
No. But
No.
think about like who
Darn.
they could call up and have them break out this year. Would any of them shock you? Like Max Kranick, would that shock you?
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like I feel like they're all like kind of on the same level. So I guess I put Mitch Keller above the rest of them because I think he's got the best chance to do it. He's probably been through the most.
Yes.
So he's seen the most. I think he's probably the one that's most poised for something that would be sustainable at least.
Yeah, and I mean, I would love to see it. And you talked about the most impactful part of it is, yeah, I mean, because if Mitch Keller can solidify himself as, potentially a number one or even a number two, he doesn't even have to be a number one, or even just a guy that, goes out there and he's serviceable. Because I think a lot of people forget in the 2020 COVID year, he actually didn't do that bad. He was actually very good if you go look at it statistically. And also, me and Gary have preached about this before. If you actually compile all of Mitch Keller's stats together, he basically has pitched the equivalent to one full season. We know he's been here longer, but if you really look at it and deep dive into it, he's pitched maybe about a season and a quarter, is what I usually say. He's got about that much experience. But as Gary already mentioned, too, look at the amount of stuff the kid has been through already. Been through some like the minor injuries. He's been through getting sent down to AAA for the first time since being on the major league roster last year. And I mean, that had to kill him. And I mean, seeing last year, I know you probably remember this, his first stint in AAA, people are like, oh, yep, he's giving up 3 runs down here too. It's like, nothing's changed. And one of the biggest things that I've always said about him, I think it's just a mentality thing. He has all the talent in the world. I really just think if he finds the command on his fastball and starts getting those breaking pitches to break the way he wants to, and he has the mental up here to do so, Mitch Keller is going to be a really, really damn good pitcher in the future if he can put that all together.
I mean, I was right there with you on the mental issues until I really, really started paying closer attention to what was actually going on with his stuff. And he's just missing spots. Like, you have to have some kind of movement on your fastball, and he doesn't. And on top of that, he can't place the breaking stuff where he needs to get the swing and miss. So it's a compound problem. I don't think it's mental as much as it's he just doesn't have the stuff all the time. That's why I think it's so encouraging what he's done this offseason, because I am seeing that movement now. And granted, it's selective pitching because it's the few shots that he provides to people to take a look at. But I do think the vertical break is a little bit better. And I like the little bit of tail that he's put on the fastball. That's something that I think he needed 2 years ago. It's something we were screaming about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. If you don't have movement, you can throw 102 miles an hour or 89 and it's going to get hit. That's just all there is to it. You have to have some kind of movement. So, encouraged to see that. That's why I think he's a breakout candidate. But the head thing, I kind of think he fought through that last year. Because he did nothing else in AAA to prove that he was ready to come back up. Besides convince Joel Hanrahan that he was right in the head.
Yeah, and I mean, I genuinely hope that going into this year, we do get to see Mitch Keller be the best pitcher that he can be, or even at least start taking steps towards that. And if I had to pick a position player, I mean, O'Neal Cruz is the obvious choice. But as you mentioned already, you got guys like Diego Castillo, Tucupita Marcano, like you already mentioned, Rodolfo Castro. And then in the outfield, Candace Smith-Njigba, Travis Swaggerty, more pitching-wise. Roansy Contreras had a good year last year and was a breakout candidate last year. He could do it again. He could take the next step just as easy as he did last year. You got like Max Kranick, Chase DeYoung maybe, but he's like a little bit up there more. David Bednar could even break out even more than he did last year and become an even better closer. That's going to be the fun part of this 2022 season, as I feel like last year was kind of like, I don't want to call it a bad year to start doing this podcast, but this team was in a bad spot. Like, it really was. And now going into this year, I mean, when the season starts, I'm going to have 6 different guys to talk about every single day.
Dude, everybody wants to look at the flower beds and nobody wants to watch the weeding.
Yeah. We watched the weeding.
That's what we did last year. We watched the weeding. That's really what it's about.
Okay, so what kind of flowers are coming out of this?
Well, I mean, let's hope it's not the roses, because we know what they still smell like, right?
Yeah. Yes. There you go. Okay.
But
yep.
We'll see. I think we're going to start to see the product of some of this work this year. That's what I'm thinking.
Let's hope so. It's going to be fun. And like you mentioned earlier, as long as I'm not watching this team lose 14-1 to the Cincinnati Reds, like 8 different times, then I think we're all good. But, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this 2022 season outlook and everything, previews, predictions, trade candidates, all that good stuff. You already know we're going to be talking more about this while this lockout ensues, but thank you for making me your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And, Gary, what are you up to this week? What do you have planned over at the DK Pirates Forum and Bucks in the Basement?
Bucks in the Basement, 5 thoughts today, and then we'll see how the week leads us along. I have a feeling it's going to be a CBA-heavy week, unfortunately. There's a lot of people that are tired of reading about that, but if they're going to meet every day, I got to cover it every day. And probably going to be talking about that a little bit heavily on the Pirates Fan Forum as well.
Awesome. Yep. And guys, again, as I mentioned last week, this is probably the most important week to getting baseball back. And as we mentioned earlier, it's kind of their last-ditch effort. So if you're the do that part type to get baseball back, then let's go for it. But check a certain tweet that I tweeted out yesterday in response to somebody about how I feel about getting baseball back sooner rather than later, or later rather than sooner. It'll make you think about it a little bit. But thank you all so much. Make sure you follow Gary on Twitter at GaryMo2007. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan and at Locked On Pirates. And I will see you guys on the flip side. Have a great rest of your Monday.